What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Review. See, I didn't catch myself slipping. I almost said the other podcast on the other episode, but we are here. We are gathered here for another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. In this episode, we are recording for James Brown Say It Loud. So this was a documentary. It came out on A&E last year. I kind of forgot about it, so what I did was I went back and I looked through Amazon Prime. They did have it for $6, so I ended up buying it. This documentary was actually 4 parts. It took me like 2 days to finish it. So again, released last year on A&E and now on Amazon Prime. My thoughts growing up, my thoughts are, I grew up listening to James Brown. If you ever hear me call James Brown my grandfather, he's not really my grandfather. The thing is, I didn't really grow up with my grandfathers in my everyday life. My dad's father lived in Michigan, and then he moved to Chicago. I didn't know about it until like a year before he died. And then my mom's dad, I didn't have much of a relationship with. So yeah, I was one of the little girls who didn't know what it was like to have a grandpa every day. So I always listened to James Brown every day. So I just consider him, that's my grandfather right there. My musical grandfather, I should say. I was exposed to James Brown by listening to my parents' music. My dad is a big James Brown fan. My mother, she worked nights, and if you guys are about in my age range, you remember the Tom Joyner Morning Show. Tom Joyner Morning Show ran from like 1994 to like 2015, 16-ish. And Tom Joyner, he would play like James Brown on the radio, Make It Funky, Doing It to Death with the JBs, those type of songs, which are all my favorite. I watched Get On Up in 2014, and as we know that biographical movies are kind of exaggerated for Hollywood. So I really wanted to know the real story of James Brown, and also things that were not mentioned in the movies. There was Get On Up. I think there was another movie made for James Brown. I could be wrong. But yeah, Hollywood, they lie for, the box office. So if you guys remember how I do my my reviews is KWL, know, want to know, and learned. So what I know, again, I know a lot about James Brown, but I can't list everything because it'll be like a 5-hour episode. So I just chose my top facts that I know, like right off the dome if somebody asks me. James Brown was born in Augusta, Georgia, in poverty. He grew up in a whorehouse, but he was born in a shack. He was in jail a lot for stealing, so he was a felon. His first group was James Brown and the Blue Flames. He was the first black man to have a plane. So if you thought, oh my God, Diddy has a plane, like this is so cool. No. Who inspired Diddy to have a plane? James Brown. He was married 4 times, and he has a lot of kids. He was arrested notably in 1988 because he took PCP and then led the police onto like a chase, and the police shot his pickup truck tires out, and he went to jail for that. His mother abandoned him. He was raised by his aunt Honey. We all know this, but I just had to put this in there because if I didn't say it, then everybody would be mad. James Brown is Michael Jackson's inspiration. Even Michael Jackson said it himself at the BET Awards in 2003 when he presented James Brown with the Lifetime Achievement Award. He said, I do everything, I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote, I do everything because of this man right here. That's what he said at his Lifetime Achievement Awards. Also, he was at his funeral. He gave him a kiss on his body in the casket. Like that was his idol for real. James Brown was close to Al Sharpton, and James Brown died on Christmas of 2006, which I really do remember. I remember because when I was a kid, Christmas was real cool, and our tradition was we used to wake up at like 7, 8 in the morning to open gifts. So I turned on the TV, our little tube TV we had before, plasma screen TVs was a thing. And I turned on CNN, and on the bottom, if you guys know how CNN, because CNN's had the same layout for years, it says Godfather of Soul James Brown dead. I think he died at like 72, 73. So yeah, he passed away around that time. So what do I want to know? I wanted to know more on his final years. You know, this is before social media. Like, social media really didn't come into play like it is until like 2008, when we had the holy grail of social media, you know, Twitter. We had Instagram, but it was for like exclusively iPhone members only. Twitter, Facebook, all that. We didn't have that when James Brown died. So I wanted to know, like, what was his final years like? Where did he live? What did he do? What did he like to do when he wasn't touring? Because we all knew he was touring and he died with dates on his books. Like, what did he do? I wanted to know if him and Michael Jackson had a friendship. Not like, oh, we saw Michael Jackson present an award to him. We saw him at his funeral. Did James Brown randomly call Michael Jackson? You know what I mean? Did Michael Jackson call him for advice during his legal issues? Things like that. I wanted more insight on him, on his post-life. I remember I was 11 years old, so y'all gotta bear with me. I remember James Brown, people saying, oh, James Brown is going on tour in death. James Brown is not buried. Why did they take so long to bury him? All those things. What about his money? Who gets his money? What happens to his house? I think he had a house in South Carolina. Wait, what happens to that? Is his house really a museum? Can people go and visit and see his home? That I heard that it has not been touched. Mind y'all, James Brown been dead almost 20 years. Next year it'll be 20 years that he's been gone. So, like, is it a museum? Can people come and see how he lived? What did those residuals from the JBs get him? Like, I want to know things like that. And also, y'all know the James Brown dance where he picks up one leg and he starts scooting with the other foot? I wonder if that hurt. Just because I'm such a fan, it's like I know so much. So I just want to like know trivial things when it comes to James Brown. So let's get to the learned. So this documentary was actually 4 parts. So I'll just go through what I learned. First, he was born in a shack, which I did mention in No. They just had to kind of reiterate that for me. He was born a stillborn, which I did not know. And they told the story of how he came back to life, which is a miracle because this is, again, poverty and before hospitals and how advanced medicine was. So that was just an awesome miracle, and that goes to show that he was meant to be on this earth. He said he was a janitor when he recorded Please, Please, Please. So he had a job. I thought he was just out here walking around. No, he had a job. He has a 7th grade education, but that times were different. You know, that was during the times where you could choose to go to high school or you could just stop at 8th grade, which is a shock to me because I graduated 8th grade high school and college. So I couldn't imagine living in a time like that. So, yeah. James Brown's song Caledonia is a cover, which I did not know because I've heard that song my whole life. I didn't know it was a cover. He was looking at 8 to 16 years for stealing, but he only served 4 years, which I guess that's a part of the criminal system that you can only serve a portion of it. He performed for white colleges in the South, which kind of shocks me because, you know, during that time, you know, the South was very confederary. If I said that word right, I don't want to say the other word, so I'll say confederary. And also he was friends with Little Richard for 50 to 60 years. So I love hearing about long-time friendships in the music business because obviously the show business is not the best. It's not like the best to have friends in. So people who are legit friends with other people in the show business, I love hearing about that. James Brown is short. James Brown is 5'6", so I'm 5'5.5". So James Brown's hair could possibly be touching my hairline, if you think about it. Yeah. I didn't know he was that short, but then I watched him on TV. I didn't know he was tall either. He never looked tall, but I didn't know he was that short, if that makes sense. James Brown's Apollo live album is very important in music history. I had that album somewhere on an MP3 disc. And what that is like, it's a special disc, can be made by Maxell or Verbatim. And it has enough space to put like hella MP3 tracks on it. I had a couple, my dad gave me some. I don't know what happened to it. And now that I've learned that how much history this album made, I want to go back and find that CD so bad. I need to find that album to listen to it. He had his own record label imprint called Try Me Records. If you guys don't know, he had, because I know so people somewhere out there is thinking like, man, James Brown was about that life. He was, but he also had a song called Try Me. So calm down, no confusion there. James Brown was a wealthy black man that he did things like open a restaurant, soul food restaurant. I bet it was good too, because James Brown know how to eat, according to what I heard. Because here's another fact about James Brown that I have to jump. James Brown had diabetes just like me. I'm not sure if he was a type 2 or had mellitus, but he was one. I remember watching a documentary. It was a random documentary on YouTube. It was for VH1, and they followed James Brown around. And James said, "Oh, I need to eat. Like, I have to eat my diabetes." It's the most annoying feeling in the world. Like, yes, you have to eat a snack or something. And it's like, you can't eat anything fatty or bad. And also, let me add this on. His daughter said he was very active. He just ate fatty foods all the time. So that can also contribute to getting diabetes. For me, it's my stress levels, and like fried foods and stuff I can't really eat because it gives me an upset stomach. So yeah, it could stem from bad food, lack of exercise, or just plain old regular stress. So I wanted to add that on there. So let me cross that out so I won't reiterate that one. James Brown's image was decided by him and not record companies, which is a refreshing thing to say, that in layman terms, that James Brown was allowed to be himself, not what some big wig who wears a suit and lives on Fifth Avenue or Park Avenue in New York City wants him to do. James Brown said, "I'm gonna be me, and you gonna like it or not." So I love that. Let's see. Martha High is his background singer. What I learned was that if you listen to the Big Payback and the lady who was doing the high pitched tone, that I can't do it. I'm not Martha High, but she sang that, and I'm shocked to know she's still alive, and she looked great. Like I didn't know that. Or she was very young when the Big Payback was recorded. Let's see. And she also said that you couldn't have an opinion with James Brown, which basically she was trying to say, like, arguing with him was like arguing with a brick wall, basically. He recorded a song to prevent students to not drop out of school. I'm all for that because I guess, he only had like a middle school education. He wanted to see the next generation of young black kids do well. Also included in the documentary, as I stated before, about his daughters. Two of his daughters and his son Larry was in the documentary. Also, I do want to say this: his daughters are gorgeous. They gotta be like in their 50s now, but they are gorgeous. One of them is actually a doctor. They went to pharmacy school. I think that was Dr. Yama Brown. And if you guys remember, Martin Luther King was assassinated and all those riots and stuff broke out. James Brown's concert, he wanted it to be on TV so they could stay home to avoid, a riot situation. But no, people did come out, and they ended up coming up and dancing with him on stage, which is a genius. And also, I do understand you were trying to prevent something, especially the fact that the concert was in Boston. So y'all gotta watch the Celtic City documentary, because they go into more detail about how like racist the city of Boston is, and how things were during like the civil rights days and Jim Crow days. Like, y'all gotta really check that out, because they go into more detail about that. James Brown owned 500 suits and 3 radio stations. Now, the radio stations at that time was a good investment because, it was back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, there was no Apple Music, there was no Spotify. You had to get your music through the radio or through vinyl. And that was like a major, 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 major like music promotion situation. And then everybody listens to the radio. There's radios in the car. There were radios in people's homes. People didn't quite have TVs yet. So that was a great investment. But the 500 suits, I don't know about that one. It wouldn't kill you to reuse a suit, James, like, honestly. Bootsy Collins played for James Brown. I actually saw Bootsy Collins on TV recently. I don't know for what. He was playing for somebody. I think it was James Brown. But I didn't know Bootsy Collins played for James Brown. I just always thought he was like in the Parliament Funkadelic part of music, but not for James Brown. And he was a teenager too. He received backlash for being a Republican. If you saw the pictures of him shaking hands with Richard Nixon, obviously that backfired because Richard Nixon used him, and that's when James Brown started making music like Funky President and all that stuff. Let's see. James Brown was like the face of branding, so there were like commercials of him promoting Coca-Cola and noodles in Asia somewhere, so that was cool. That was really cool. He ended up moving to a white area of Augusta. That's how you know you got some money. So good for him. And he, then as the documentary went on, it started talking about his money issues. He also had 40 acres, and the radio station was lost to the IRS because he didn't pay his taxes. James Brown and the Eddie Murphy story. So if you guys don't know, there's a documentary on Apple TV called what is it, First Call or something. It was a lot of black actors in their experience of being on a call sheet or whatever. I'm not too sure, but I've seen the preview before. And Eddie Murphy told the story about how James Brown told him to bury his money in the woods. That way, the government won't take it. But the government has money, and they have enough money to get whatever like piece of equipment they want to go dig up the entire piece of property. I'm just saying, I mean, it sounds logical, but don't forget the government has money too, and they can do whatever they want. Just saying. James Brown and his wife, Adrienne, they had a toxic relationship in the beginning. You know, police were called, someone went to jail, someone threw hands, things like that. So it was a toxic relationship. But then I think things eventually calmed down because she actually ended up passing away due to plastic surgery complications. Now, I heard her, I knew she passed away, but I always thought it was from something else. But I didn't know it was from plastic surgery complications. So that made him a widower for a while. So back to the car chase in 1988. I knew about the car chase. I knew what the police did. I knew he ended up going to jail for it. What I didn't know was that the car chase was 2 states, but even though Georgia and South Carolina are fairly close, they're like Illinois, Indiana, south suburbs. You easily cross over the border close. So I didn't know it was like both states. I just thought it was like down some road in South Carolina, but no, it was 2 roads. So he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but he only served 2.5 years. And he also had a pay-per-view concert after prison. So I know somewhere during that time, my dad paid for that to watch that. And then his wife passed away. He was a widower. He had dishonest accountants, which sucks because James Brown was just such a star. Like, he was such a big star, and he had dishonest accountants. And when you have dishonest accountants, they put you in the hole. We all know that, He had along with his diabetes, he had early stages of prostate cancer, which he did have treated because obviously he's James Brown. He should have the best medical insurance. But into the 2000s, he was still touring, but he was getting older and he needed IVs and he was sick a lot. But James Brown was always a giving man because before he died, he did have a toy giveaway because he did die on Christmas. So this was before. And also, he died December 25th, 2006, due to pneumonia. So I don't remember them going into detail about the estate situation and all that stuff. So they really didn't cover all that. But the documentary did stop when he passed away. So I do give this a 5 out of 5 in Mandy stars. I loved seeing archive interviews with James Brown, and I also liked hearing his voice tell his story. It wasn't like, it was. This is, for example, this is Bootsy Collins telling his story, but Bootsy Collins was only there for a portion of his life. You know what I mean? It's James Brown telling the story of James Brown. And what I disliked was seeing his daughter and the people who worked with him cry because he passed away. And yes, it's been 20 years, but I hate seeing people cry because, if you lost a loved one close to you, they say time heals all wounds, but when it comes to grief, I don't think that should matter. Because I lost my auntie almost 10 years ago, I still cry. Don't tell people that who are grieving. I don't like that. What I didn't like also is that there was no mention of Get On Up. So the documentary came out in 2014. Get On Up came out in 2014. This documentary came out in 2024. There is a nice 10-year gap. I saw no mention of Get On Up. Should have mentioned that. And also there's no mention of Fred Wesley and the JBs. I didn't even see Fred Wesley do an interview. So why wasn't Fred Wesley involved? But yeah, that is my review, Mandy's Entertainment Reviews for James Brown Say It Loud. Again, it is on Amazon Prime because it was on A&E, but people these days don't really pay for cable. So you can buy it on Amazon Prime for $6.99. And thank y'all for listening, and hopefully I'll do some more episodes tonight. I gotta catch up. I got so much to catch up on, so hopefully I'll get some done tonight. All right, y'all. Talk to you later. Peace.